Alright guys, we have the 2005 Ford Ranger here with us today with a V6 3.0, and today we'll be replacing the water pump and fan clutch. We went ahead and got a kit from Rock Auto that include the water pump and fan clutch. You can change just the water pump, but we decided we will change both. And this video will show you the steps in doing so. Here is the part number. We got it from Rock Auto. Comes with water pump, gasket, and fan clutch. Very first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and remove these hose clamps, or loosen them so we can get the air intake hose out of the way. Now just rotate it there. Alright, so I'm going to remove these four little 10 millimeter bolts that hold the fan to the fan clutch. Alright, and now I'm going to use the air hammer to go ahead and crack this loose. Keep in mind it is reverse threaded, so we're looking like we're tightening. Now I'm going to use a big adjustable to get it off the rest of the way. There it goes, popped on out. Alright, so now I have the fan clutch and the fan just hanging loose. I'm going to take these two bolts off that hold the shroud in and pull all three at the same time. Alright, so now we have a complete access to the front. Here's how we're going to do it. Before we remove the belt, we're going to crack these 10 millimeters that are for the water pump pulley. We will then remove this idler pulley. It's a 15 millimeter. And then we will remove the tensioner right here. So first we're going to crack loose the water pump bolts. Then we can remove the belt, and then we'll remove the tensioner and the idler. Alright, so here we are, we're further down in the water pump. Here's our new one, so when we're lining it up, we're going to have to remove this hose and that hose right here. The AC bracket on mine is not bolted in, but yours will have to be removed. And to get these lower bolts on the water pump, you see they're up in there, I think we're going to have to move this whole bracket that holds the AC and the power steering, because I don't think we're going to be able to back out those bolts there. What a poor design. Alright, so here's a 13 millimeter nut that holds on this bracket for the AC, so we'll loosen that up. We're going to have to remove the AC and power steering bracket. Now, I'm not going to discharge or drain the AC or power steering, but if you look, we're going to need to remove this bolt for the bracket. And let's get a little further view. There's another one there and a third one in there. So those three on the front side, and if we come around the back side, we're going to need to remove that stud and nut right there, and then there's one below it. You see it in between the hoses. So that one and that one will need to be removed. Once those are removed, this whole unit with the power steering and AC can be slid over to the right in order to access the water pump. Alright, so these are the bolts removed. These two were on the driver's side. One had a nut because it was holding in a wiring harness, and then these two were on the front. The longer one was the upper, and then the two smaller ones were lower. All right, so now with all those removed, you can see the bracket is movable. All right, so now we are ready to remove the two coolant hoses right here and right here, and then we'll start moving the 12 bolts that surround the perimeter of the water pump. I do have a little catch can underneath to catch any coolant coming out. All right, now it's time to remove the water pump. So we'll be taking all the perimeter bolts. As I take them, I'm gonna be transferring them to the new water pump and putting them in the exact spot that I took the old one out. So that way you don't lose track of the bolts and you go ahead and keep them in the right order because they're not all the same. Okay, majority of them are 13 millimeters, but if you look, we do have some small ones, looks to be 10s. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start removing all of them. I may have to unplug that crank position sensor, but we'll see. You know what? I will unplug that crank position sensor. Just push the tab down and pull up. Okay, cool. Time to remove them all. All right, so now the water pump is out. I'm going to clean the mating surface for the new water pump and gasket with this drill and wire brush attachment. All right, so we pretty much cleared all the mating surface. We used a combination of a couple of drills with wire brushes and a razor blade. Do what you gotta do to get your old gasket material off. Here's the new water pump. We're gonna go ahead and transfer all the bolts to the old water pump while we mount the gasket with some RTV. All right, we're gonna use some water pump RTV here, and we're gonna place it on the mating surface, gasket, and then another thin layer on top of the gasket. Okay, that's what it calls for, both sides, and just thin layers, guys. We're not globbing it on there too much. All right, now it's time to reinstall. It is a bunch of 13 millimeters and 8 millimeters, not 10. Just want to recommend. All right, so here is the new water pump. And yeah, everything's about 9 foot-pounds of torque. And now it's all ready to start putting them back together. So I'm going to reverse everything order and I'll time lapse it. If you got any questions, leave it down in the comments below. All right, little recap of where we're at. We're going to make sure you plug in your crank position sensor, the bracket for the AC, and the 5 bolts for the bracket for the power steering and AC compressor. One here, one here, one here. See if you get a little 13, 13, 13, and then the 2 down on this side. Okay, so we also got the hoses hooked up, and now we're going to start putting back the pulleys for the tensioner, idler, and the water pump. All right, so just finishing up here. Went ahead and got everything back together. A couple things you might see in the time lapse is one, when you're putting the fan clutch cover, the fan shroud, you want to put it in at the same time with the fan clutch, otherwise you're not going to be able to put them back separately. Another thing was those 4 bolts that hold the fan shroud on the back of it. I went ahead and left them loose, just started them so I could fit a crescent wrench on top of that nut for the fan clutch. Now, remember that fan clutch is reverse threaded, so you're going to want to, tighten it by loosening it. Okay, everything's back together. I will fill the coolant in, but I'm going to let the RTV cure overnight, And tomorrow I will fill up the coolant and we'll be all good from there. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments below.